The Sumerians were not supposed to know the Black Sea had a floor, let alone what rests on it. They had no vessels for those depths, no instruments, no way to sound water that swallows light whole. Yet a single clay tablet, raised from the seabed in 1873 and quietly filed in a museum vault ever since, maps a structure down there with a precision modern sonar would not confirm until the 1990s. The tablet calls that structure a door. It says the door is guarded, and it warns in the scribe's own hand that the guards have never once looked away. To understand what Andreev pulled out of the water, you first have to understand what happened to it afterward. The fragment was shipped to St. Petersburg in a sealed crate, logged once on arrival, and then absorbed into the imperial collection under a catalogue number that, for reasons no archivist has ever explained, was never cross-listed in the public index. When the collection was partially transferred after 1917, the tablet moved with it. Today it sits in storage. You cannot photograph it. You cannot request it without institutional credentials. According to two researchers who have tried, you cannot even confirm its catalogue entry without filing a written application that is, in their words, routinely returned unanswered. That alone would be a curiosity. What makes it more than that is what the tablet appears to say and who wrote it. The Sumerians are the oldest civilization we can name. Mainstream history places them in the marshlands between the Tigris and Euphrates around 4500 BC and credits them with the first writing, the first wheel, the first legal code, the first cities. What that history struggles to explain is how all of it arrived at once. They did not develop slowly into a civilization. They appeared as one, fully formed, carrying astronomical knowledge it would take the rest of humanity another 5,000 years to recover. They tracked the lunar month to the second. They knew the length of the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle of nearly 26,000 years that requires generations of recorded observation to even notice. They named bodies in the sky they had no instrument to see. And among the hundreds of thousands of clay tablets buried in their ruined cities, in a series that was supposed to run to at least 7, only one is said to survive intact. It is the tablet Andreev raised from the Black Sea. The other 6 are listed as fragments, or, according to a Russian Academy researcher who spoke off the record in 2009, were removed from the working catalogue in the 1960s, their present location not on file. Here is where the strangeness sharpens to a point. The Black Sea is not an ordinary body of water. Below roughly 200 meters, it is an oxic dead, the largest pocket of oxygen-starved water on Earth. Nothing decays there in the usual way. Wooden ships from antiquity have been found on its floor, with the ropes still coiled on the deck. It is, in the most literal sense, a place that preserves what should have rotted away. And it is precisely there, in the deep dark where nothing lives, that the tablet says the door was placed. That detail matters because the Black Sea as we know it is young. Many geologists believe it was a freshwater lake until around 5600 BC, when the Mediterranean breached the Bosphorus and drowned the old shoreline under a wall of salt water, displacing whatever lived along its banks. A Sumerian scribe in 2400 BC, writing more than 3,000 years after that flood, should have had no record of the land that existed before the water rose. Yet the tablet describes the door as resting on the floor of the old plain beneath the new sea, as though it knew there had been a plain there at all. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where it stops being a historical curiosity and starts becoming something else. And I realized while preparing this that not all of it fits in a video. The full coordinate set, the carbon dates, the line-by-line transliteration, the name of the researcher who first flagged the catalog gap. I put all of it into a written document. The link is in the description, and the QR code is on your screen. You do not need it to follow along. But the people who go deeper into this, tend to want the original notation in front of them. Take it now if you want it, and then stay with me, because the next part is the tablet itself. The tablet itself is not large. It measures roughly 7 inches by 5, which is standard for Sumerian record-keeping. What is not standard is the density of the inscription. The cuneiform is packed so tightly that the first scholars to examine it assumed 2 scribes had worked the surface, a later hand writing over an earlier one. Spectral imaging in the 1990s found no second layer. The entire text was cut by a single hand, in a single sitting, by someone who knew exactly what they meant to record and did not pause to reconsider it. The first legible lines read, in literal translation, "The sea covers the door. The door was shut from above. Those who shut it remained." This is not flood mythology, though it borrows the shape of it. The scribe is precise where myth is vague. He gives the door a depth. He measures it in a unit called the biru, which corresponds to roughly 7 miles, and then, strangely, divides it into a smaller fractional unit no other Sumerian tablet uses. When the figure is converted, it places the door at a depth of approximately 2,100 meters beneath the surface of the sea. That number is worth sitting with. The deepest point of the Black Sea is about 2,200 meters. The tablet places the door within 100 meters of the true floor of a sea that, by every account of Sumerian capability, they could not measure. They had no means to sound water past a few fathoms. They had no reason to believe the Black Sea had a measurable bottom at all. And yet the depth they recorded lands within a margin of error under 3% of a figured modern bathymetry would not establish until research vessels mapped the basin in detail in the late 20th century. Then the tablet does something almost no ancient document does. It gives coordinates, 3 of them. 2 are astronomical, fixing a point in the sky relative to 2 named stars that, on modern charts, resolve to a bearing running south by southeast across the basin. The third coordinate is the one that has cost researchers decades. It is written in that same fractional notation, found nowhere else, and the most accepted reading, proposed by a Georgian linguist named Tamaz Beridze in 1971, is that it encodes a distance from a fixed shoreline marker. Followed across the modern map, the 3 coordinates converge on the deepest anoxic trough of the Western Basin, the one place on Earth where a structure of clay or stone could lie undisturbed and undecayed for 7,000 years. The tablet names the ones who shut the door. In Sumerian, they are called the Igigi, a word most often rendered as those who watch or those who keep. The Igigi appear in other texts as a class of celestial beings distinct from the Anunnaki, the gods said to have descended to the earth. The Anunnaki came down. The Igigi, according to this tablet, stayed at the threshold. They were the keepers. They were the ones who watched the door so that nothing would come through it, and nothing would go down to it. And the scribe describes them. Not as gods, not as symbols, but as things he writes about, as though they had been seen. He says they are not shaped like men. He says their faces are of the bright metal and their eyes do not close. He says they wear coverings that shine like the river under the noon sun, and that their voices, when they speak, are not heard in the ear, but felt in the bone. He says they have stood at the door since before the first city, since before the first man, since before, in a line half destroyed by a crack across the clay, the water that drowned the first plain. That last phrase is the one that stops the scholars who reach it, because the water that drowned the first plain is not the famous flood of the later Sumerian myths. It is older. It is the breach of the Bosphorus, the drowning of the freshwater lake, the event that made the Black Sea what it is. The tablet is saying the keepers were already at the door when the sea came in over them. They did not flee the rising water. They went down with it, and they stayed. Before the next part, take the document if you have not. The transliteration of these lines is in it. set beside the original signs so you can see for yourself where the depth figure and the coordinates sit in the clay. The QR code is on your screen. What comes next is the part the keepers were left to wait for. The tablet does not say the keepers wait forever. It says they wait for a condition, and it states the condition plainly. The door, the scribe writes, was shut until the counted are many as the grains the river carries. For a long time this was read as poetry, but the next line attaches a number to it, written in cuneiform and verified by more than one independent translator, and the number is not poetic at all. It is a figure for the count of men, 800 million, doubled and doubled again. In a sequence the scribe lays out across 4 lines until it resolves to something close to 7 billion. The human population of Earth in 2400 BC was perhaps 27 million. There was no way for a Sumerian scribe to picture 7 billion people, no demographic frame in which that number meant anything. Yet he records it as a threshold, the count at which the keeper's waiting ends. The world passed 7 billion in 2011, and the tablet says what follows when the count is full. When the many are counted, the door is opened from below. The keepers stand aside. What was shut comes up through the dark water. The most disturbing line is the last legible one, and it is the line the earliest translators are said to have left out of the working notes entirely. It reads, "We sealed it for them, and we are the lock." There are skeptics, and their case deserves to be heard. Cuneiform is a notoriously slippery script. Many Sumerian words carry 3 or 4 meanings, and the most alarming reading of this tablet leans on the least common sense of several key terms. Mainstream Assyriologists argue the depth match is coincidence, that the coordinates are creative interpretation, that the population figure is a doubling sequence, read backward to fit a number we already knew. Their argument is not without merit. The leading academic critic, a German scholar named Konrad Reisinger, published a paper in 1989 calling the whole document temple propaganda, written to frighten a population into obedience to its priesthood. His reading was widely accepted. It was also quietly withdrawn from circulation by his estate after his death in 2004, with no explanation given by his family or his publisher. But the skeptics cannot explain everything. They cannot explain the depth recorded within 3% of a floor no Sumerian could sound. They cannot explain coordinates that converge on the one anoxic trough where clay would survive 7,000 years. They cannot explain how a scribe in 2400 BC fixed a population number not reached until our own century. And they cannot explain why a tablet that is, on their account, only frightened myth was sealed under restricted access in the first place. There are 3 ways to read this, and no more. The first is coincidence, a chain of remarkable accidents that happen to line up with modern science. The second is that the Sumerians inherited their knowledge from an older source, some civilization drowned under the same sea and lost entirely to record. The third is the explanation the tablet gives for itself, that the keepers are real, that they were left at a door on the floor of the Black Sea, and that the count they were told to wait for is now full. Whichever you choose, the tablet exists. It is in a vault. It carries the inscriptions described here, and somewhere under 2,000 meters of dead, dark, oxygen-starved water, in the one sea on Earth that lets nothing decay. The thing the scribe was sealed is still sealed, and the count he could not have known is already past. He did not write what comes up when the door opens. He only wrote that the keepers were the lock, and that the lock was never meant to hold once the counting was done.